Canada's economy grew by 2.2% in the first quarter, above market expectations and among the strongest in the G7. Well, let's look into this. Inventory buildup and exports drove the increase in GDP, suggesting an attempt at front-running tariffs. Headlines: 2.2% growth, reality 0% domestic demand, consumer spending collapsed, 31K manufacturing jobs lost. We take a look here, the hidden weakness, final domestic demand stalls, it literally tanks all the way to zero. Consumer spending plummets despite GDP growth. Job market, manufacturing hit hard. Ontario lost 35,000 jobs in April 2025, the largest decline of any province. Grew by 2.2% in the first quarter, or grew at an annualized rate of 2.2% in the first quarter, while QOQ improved 0.55%. And hell, let's go even further. Our strong economy. Parkland agrees to be bought by US heavyweight Sunoco. Our auto industry continues to die. Honda stalls EV investments, further threatening Canadian auto jobs. And right now, if we go to the food banks of Canada, over 2 million people had visited food banks in March of 2024, and I can only assume it has gone up since then, considering we've also brought in more people. To go even further, latest labor data shows Canadians are begging the Bank of Canada for renewed rate relief. The ranks of the unemployed ballooned 14% over the past year. Not exactly the definition of economic vitality. And if the economy was so great in the first quarter, then why did Service Canada cut nearly 800 employees? And to go even further, GTA home sales hit record lows for the 7th straight month.
Mr. Speaker, the sale of new homes in the GTA just hit a 7th straight month of record-setting lows. Only 310 new homes were sold in the GTA in April. That's a 72% drop over last year and an 89% drop in the 10-year average. With condo sales plummeting 94%. Wow. The report warns that there will be a massive housing shortage in 2 years. Prices are too high for buyers and they're too low for sellers. So can the Prime Minister tell us what he plans to do to help the buyers that cannot afford to buy and the sellers that cannot afford to sell?
Well, we've already heard it from the housing minister. Absolutely nothing is going to happen. The Liberals have caused us to hit rock bottom. And then when things go up by literally 2.2% as they claim, they sit there, celebrate, and pat themselves on the back. This is very typical of the Liberal Party. They set the bar so low, so when they actually do change things, even if it's so extremely minuscule, they sit there and go, we're doing this for Canadians and we're the party for Canadians. It's absurd. Pierre did a little interview here, or podcast, whatever you want to call it, with the new Energy Shadow Minister. Let's take a listen.
Look, natural gas is a big part of the solution. Gas is still extremely cheap in North America, and you can power the data centers with gas-fired electrical generators. You know, $3 for the gas, yeah. And we have that abundance of power that could fire up these data centers. They're real energy consuming beasts, like you say. Somebody was telling me that when you do a ChatGPT inquiry, it takes 9 times as much electricity as when you do a Google search. So just one example of how much energy these data centers burn through in order to do their work. Well, we have an immense amount of energy that could power these things, to the point where I think the Americans, when we get through all this trade insanity, are going to end up having to set up their data centers in Canada. Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're all talking about buying their own nuclear reactors to power their data centers. That's how much energy they need. So a nuclear power station just for them. And we can say, listen, you don't need to spend those billions or take those risks. We have the energy in Canada. Yeah. We're a secure place to store your data. We're right next door. Cold climate means that it's not as expensive to cool down the data centers, which generate a tremendous amount of heat for malfunction. So we have that advantage, but we've got to unlock our energy abundance to do it.
So I've been questioned on this as well, in terms of using natural gas to turn it into electricity. But I also point out that BC had limitations on phase 2 of LNG Canada.
Right.
They wanted to electrify it.
So for those that are listening, you've got phase 1 is almost done. You know, several months they'll start shipping gas, but there's a phase 2 which will massively increase it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and phase 2, BC wanted them to electrify the turbines. Well, they just lifted those conditions and said, you don't have to be net zero by 2030. You have to be net zero ready by 2030, knowing that we have a deficiency in electricity supply and infrastructure in BC. And that's what nobody's talking about. Energy is the foundation not only of our future in terms of economics, but our quality of life.
Right.
Right? And just be honest about our electricity demand here, because this year everybody's predicting that we're going to have to buy more electricity in the United States.
That's crazy.
Upwards of 20%.
That is crazy. Sending more money to the Americans for something we can produce cheaper at home if we get out of our own way.
Yes.
Yeah, energy is the solution to poverty. You need energy. Massive, cheap, affordable, reliable energy. Energy, it heats, it cools our people, it moves our people and our products. And if we don't have cheap energy, we're always going to have people living in poverty. Well, we have the potential to be the most energy abundant country not just in the world, but in the history of the world. And that's what we need to unlock.
The sad fact of the reality is, it took a leader of another country to kick our asses in gear to even begin this thought process. And I hate the fact that we're demonizing our closest ally and running to places like the EU and the UK, or buddying up with China. As much as we want to be independent, we're still gonna need the United States to some degree. Literal trillions of dollars flowing back and forth between the two countries, and to sit here and say, oh, well, we don't want the United States anymore, just comes off as pure insanity. And I'm not calling out Pierre here specifically, but I mean across the board with our MPs in Parliament. Well, just when you thought he was gone, he returns. A national security investigation reveals that the Trudeau PMO politically interfered with an active CSIS operation. Trudeau officials broke the law and put CSIS personnel in danger. Trudeau government unlawfully halted CSIS foreign operations, endangering officers and damaging Canada's standing with allies. Just a friendly reminder, bringing everybody back to this video here.
I want to be very clear. We can prove that every federal government from Mr. Mulroney to Mr. Trudeau have been compromised by agents of the Communist China. Every government were informed at one point or another. Every government chose to ignore CSIS warning either by negligence, self-interest, or partisanship. Every government were infiltrated by agents of influence acting on behalf of the Chinese government, and we knew who they were.
And we still don't have a list of any MPs that potentially could be compromised, and they're still working in Parliament. And the last thing I'm going to go into, Danielle Smith absolutely tears Stephen Guilbeault apart.
A tax cut, as we have heard the uncertainty around tariffs, the potential increase in costs. There's still uncertainty about inflation. Is it going up? Is it flatlining? Is it going down? We wanted to make sure that people had money in their pockets to deal with those kind of pressures. It's $750 for an individual, $1,500 for a family. And it was one of the commitments we made in the election, so we accelerated that. We want to ensure that we have more production of oil and gas, because more production of oil and gas would allow us to get more revenue so that we're able to pay for the things that matter to people. One of the numbers I've been saying, and this is again to put into context why Albertans are so furious that we've been stymied. If we built Energy East, that would have been a 1 million barrel a day pipeline. If we built Keystone, that would have been about a 900,000 barrel a day pipeline. If we'd built Northern Gateway, that would have been about a 600,000 barrel a day pipeline. 2.5 million barrels per day at today's prices would generate $55 billion worth of revenue, of which about $17 billion would go to governments. So when you think about what we would be doing with $17 billion of additional revenue each year, the hospitals, the schools, the ability to hire nurses and doctors, it is not just an academic argument when the federal government gets in our way of building those pipelines. It has a real impact on our economy. So in the short term, yes, we've got a bit of a pinch, but in the long term, if we can address some of those issues, then I think we'll be able to have the revenues to keep up with growth.
All right, here's texter in. I think he's questioning or wondering whether Stephen Guilbeault has some ulterior motives. He said, with Stephen Guilbeault stating that he will be creating new federal parks, do you have a plan to counteract this action should these be another land grab to stop Alberta from getting oil or LNG pipelines built, especially if they put them in areas bordering Alberta, such as northern BC, the Territory, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or even southern Alberta, in order to block new pipelines to the States.
Well, I don't think he has an ulterior motive. I think he has an overt motive to do exactly what that texter said. We've already put legislation in place. I do not want to see one additional acre of territory that's within Alberta turned into a federal park, urban or national or otherwise. If there is critical habitat that Albertans want to protect, we'll do it like we did with Kananaskis. We'll put in provincial parks. We'll do it like we did with Fish Creek. We'll put in provincial parks. We certainly don't need Stephen Guilbeault telling us what is important to protect in Alberta.
And based on the last reporter scrum I watched, it looks like Stephen Guilbeault got a big slap on the wrist and was told to shut up about pipelines. It feels like Guilbeault's got it out for Alberta. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. I want to know what you think down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new, and thank you very much for watching.